No, no, cause everything's alright. Once there is love, everything is alright. Once there is love, everything is alright now. Once there is love.
All right, fam. It's a blessing to be here. It's about 1 a.m. It's coming to 1 a.m. here in East Africa. And yeah, you're very welcome to Habari Yakobo. This is our introductory video. It's great to see you. Just a short introduction. I go by Gabaeli, Israeli, Yasuleli. Yeah, I am a Bible scholar and a teacher, believing in all the words written by the prophets, an Israelite by birth, tribe of Judah, father of 2 daughters and a husband of 1 wife, a deacon of a camp situated within, well, Zion, what we like to call Zionu. And it's a beautiful thing, yeah, to be in the land of the living. Over on my right side, I guess it would be your left, is actually my partner in study, my brother, a great scholar, and I guess he'll be introducing himself shortly as well. We'll be telling you a lot about what this channel will be covering, and yes, this is what we'll be, this is what we got today. Yeah, say something.
Oh yeah, it's great to be here. My name is Solomon Mugaga, and we have a lot that we're willing to share with everyone out there, all the Israelites, all those that are woken up to the truth. It's gonna be phenomenal here on the Habari platform. One love, family. We're gonna do so much together, and looking forward to every other thing that the Most High is gonna open our minds to. Everything's gonna work out just fine. So stay tuned.
All praises to the Most High. Great thing about the channel, Habari Yakobo, a little bit about what we're trying to do. This is a platform for Israel all around the world. Those who are awake to the knowledge of the truth, who the Israelites really are, you know, and likewise, our brothers who haven't yet come to the realization that Bantus, Hispanics, Native Americans are the Israelites. But what's unique about this channel is we're going to be engaging Israel in vital subject matters pertaining prophecy, regarding what's taking place in the last days, whether these prophecies are things that have taken place already or things we await to come. We'll be talking about history, we'll be talking about geography, we'll be talking about geopolitics, we'll be talking about politics even. All these areas are relevant for the children of the awakening to be at par when it comes to what the scripture actually said. Now, there's many camps out there presently, and I'd like to acknowledge that we appreciate the work that the Most High is doing in the earth. It's prophecy unfolding. You know, it's no man's duty. The Messiah gave us a commission, and we can see the evidence of the work that the disciples did. It's fruitful. So big ups to everybody out there that's putting their hand on a plow, organizations like IUIC, GOCC, individuals like there's the brother Yonah Golab from the Hebrew Broadcasting Network. We'd actually like to do a shout out to brothers like Yahonde Batekani out there in Tanzania. Big ups to the work that you're doing, brother. Big ups to Ron Dalton. Yeah, not to say the least. And everybody out there that we may not have mentioned, We hope that this forum may be a place of learning for everybody out there. If you know something about these people, then this channel is no hostile place to anyone of the awakening. Otherwise, it's building bridges. We will now be getting into a short subject. We are going to touch shortly on, all of us are anticipating the return of the Messiah. Needless to say, everybody's talking about the Israelites are going back to the land of their heritage, the land of our forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Now, unbeknownst to many of the Israelites, many of the Israelite camps have their own take on times and seasons and a lot of issues. You know, not everything comes together in one plate. Whereas, just like the book of that we all see in a glass, we will be showcasing scriptural evidences that point towards exactly where the promised land is and where it's going to be, that the children of Yasuleli, in a Bantu pronunciation of the word, the term Israel, where exactly this location is supposed to be. Yes. So, Deacon Solomon, just open it up.
All right, so we gotta think about the holistic perspective when it comes to understanding biblical accounts from beginning to end of the Bible. We have to have holistic perspectives, looking at historical narratives that people have been given us, and geographical narratives that that are popular today that people have used to prove whether the people who are in Palestine today are Israelites or not. On this platform, we believe that Black people, of course, Black people is a general term, but most specifically, the people within sub-Saharan Africa, the Bantu people, are Israelites, including the Native Americans of the U.S., North and South America, and also all the people that were scattered in slave trade across the world. So one of the things that we got to look at is the people who spoke about the people who spoke about the people in Israel, who are in Israel today as the Jews. They mentioned geographical narratives and historical narratives that support the idea of the Jews who are in Israel today being in that land particularly and having that particular appearance. However, the question that I would like to give all those who are awake today in the system, realizing the truth and realizing the fact that the original Israelites were actually not the people who are told to us today as Israelites, but rather it is us, the people of Africa, the Bantu people. Why would you believe every other narrative that is given by the public, popular narratives about the land of Palestine, or more specifically, the geographical location of the Middle East, having biblical accounts centered around the Middle East? So we got to look at the holistic perspective, and we have to question everything that is given. And we welcome questions on this platform as well. And in just a minute, we're going to share with you guys in a few minutes about concrete evidence, which is within the scriptures that they claim do not belong to our people, that the land that the Most High actually gave Abraham and the land that the Most High gave Jacob, the son of Isaac, is actually none other than the land that has enriched the whole world, and that is Africa. So let's take a close look at the first portions of the scriptures that have ever talked about geography, because geography is very key. You cannot claim to know who you are if you don't know where you came from, if you don't know where your geographical origin is. If you claim that you know that Israelites are black, that's all right. However, it's important for you to know the fact that if you're black and you're Israelite, how do the people who share an origin with you speak the way that they speak? How did they end up where they are? And how do people prove whether the language that you speak is Israelite language originally, or whether it's just adopted, and whether it's just forged? So we got to look at all these aspects and pay close attention. So the first place that we're gonna visit in the scriptures that is most prominent, you got to look at the ancient past. We're going to look at the first book of the English Bible, the KJV 1611, preferably Genesis chapter 2. And we're going to be starting from verse 8. Brother Gabriel, you could read for me Genesis chapter 2, starting from verse 8, and we break that down.
It's the book of Genesis, chapter 2, verse 8. King James 16:11. And the Lord God planted a garden eastward in Eden, and there he put the man whom he had formed. Verses
So
9.
the territory which we're looking at here is centered in Eden. And he's planted a garden eastward in Eden. The name of Eden the name of the garden is not mentioned. However, it's within Eden. So we can proceed.
The book of Genesis, chapter 2, verses 9. And out of the ground made the Lord God to grow every tree that is pleasant to the sight and good for food. The tree of life also in the midst of the garden, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil.
So in the portion of scripture that we're reading, every portion of scriptures that we look at, and the portions of scriptures that diverse teachers have been looking at, or theologians, they have testimonies of scientific testimony when it comes to archaeology and when it comes to climate to support the narratives they have. If you look at trees that are of every multiple type that are good for food, you're looking at a tropical kind of climate situated within Eden. We can continue.
The book of Genesis, chapter 2, verses 10. And a river went out of Eden to water the garden, and from thence it was parted and became into 4 heads.
So it said a river came out of Eden to water the garden, and from thence it parted into 4 heads. So the river that came out to water the garden was parted into 4 heads. They've not yet mentioned the name of the river. They simply called it a river. It's not rivers, it's singular, saying it's a river that is parted into 4 heads. So we're going to find out the names of each other river that is in Eden. We can continue.
The book of Genesis, chapter 2, verses 11. The name of the first is Pison. That is it which compasses the whole land of Havilah, where there is gold. And the gold of that land is good, and there is bdellium and onyx stone. Verse
So the
13.
first, yes, you can go to verse 13. Yes.
And the name of the second river is the Gihon. The same is that compasseth the whole land of Ethiopia.
So the question is, if you talk about the fact that we're talking about the heads. We talked about the heads in the first verse, the fact that there were 4 heads. But these scriptures are calling these rivers. So there's the first river called the Pison, and there's a second, which is called the Gihon, which compasses the whole land of Ethiopia. These rivers are as the river that is watering the Garden of Eden. They're not mentioning names of heads. The grammatical sense in the context that we're reading is that the rivers have their own names. The heads are not being named. It's naming the rivers. So otherwise it would have been saying, and the name of the first head is Pison, and the name of the second head. No, there's a difference between a head and the river. In the first verse that we read about, it was mentioning the fact that a river went out of Eden to water the garden, and it's split into 4 heads. It means that the word head is showing you a difference between river and head. So we need to get that clear, that the name of Pison and the name of Gihon, these are rivers within Eden, but not naming the heads. So it's up to you to find out what river actually splits in 4 that waters the Garden of Eden. What river of these rivers that are going to be mentioned splits into 4? Yes, we can continue.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, adding on to what you just broke down, Deacon Solomon, when you read back over there in verses 10, where it says, and a river went out of the garden, went out of Eden to water the garden. One's got to ask, where's Eden and where's the garden? Right? Because verses 8 of the same book told us that the Lord God planted a garden eastward in Eden, meaning that Eden is the place in which a garden is planted. The garden in itself, just like you said already, isn't named Eden, but otherwise, had planted a garden eastward in Eden, suggesting that Eden is a larger location than the garden itself. And it's interesting that when you come back to verses 10, it states that a river went out of now the larger area, the vicinity being referred to as Eden. Okay, it's coming out of there to water the garden. And what direction is the garden? The garden is eastward in the larger area being referred to as Eden. And that's important to note because it means amongst these 4 rivers, there's a river that's flowing eastward to water the garden that's in Eden. Right, that's why I wanted to point out.
Oh yeah, thank you so much for that clarity. So the river that splits in 4 is flowing east of Eden, because the garden was planted east in Eden, and that river that splits in 4 waters the garden. So we need to find out in the verse that you read, the last verse that you had just read, he talked about the Gihon. The Gihon River is encompassing the whole land of Cush, the whole land of Cush. Cush is a son of Ham, according to the Bible. Ham had Canaan, Cush, Put, and Lud. These were the sons of Ham. And if you look at the land, which people like to say the land of the Hamites is Africa, in that they refer to people in Africa having been people who descended from Ham. So people who descended from Ham, if you look at the location of the land of Cush, it's called Ethiopia in Greek. So it flows throughout the whole land of Ethiopia. It encompasses English grammar of when you say encompassing, how does a river encompass land? That's the question. When you look at a river, it gives you the borderline of land. How does it do it? Because most people look at a river and just see the river is traveling straight forward, and nothing else is in display of that. But we need to look and ask ourselves how a river encompasses. So the way rivers encompass is through river basins, the areas in which the river empties itself and creates a boundary over a whole large region, a whole large expanse of land. And so I'm going to share my screen here and display the river basins, particularly the river basin of the Gihon River, which encompasses the whole land of Ethiopia. We know that there's only one river that flows in the modern day land of Ethiopia. Only one river. So we need to ask ourselves, what river is that flows in Ethiopia? What river is it? It's the Nile River. The Nile River flows throughout the whole land of Ethiopia in Africa. So if you ask yourself that, they said Eden. Eden is a territory that we're looking at. So if you mention Ethiopia, you're trying to say that Ethiopia is a territory within Eden. So we're actually discovering and realizing that the river which flows in Ethiopia is watering the garden, which is planted east of Eden. So the question is, Ethiopia, where is it situated? It's situated east of Africa. East of Africa, and so is the Nile River is situated east of Africa. And the source of the Nile is situated east of Africa. So the river that comes out of Eden to water the garden, that splits into four that they're mentioning in the first verse, is going to be the Nile River, which splits into four. And the evidences of the Nile River having four parts, we're going to see diverse maps as we carry on with this. But it's good for us to also know that other rivers are flowing out of Eden. So now we know that the landmass is the same. The landmass of the Nile River is the same as the landmass of the Gihon River that flows through Ethiopia. And what other rivers are in this landmass? The Pison River, which flows throughout the whole land of Havilah. So the Pison is flowing in a territory that contains good gold, onyx stone, and bdellium. Bdellium is a tree sap. If you look at onyx stone and gold, there's particular qualities of gold. They mention the land that has good gold, and it has a river flowing in Eden. So we need to clarify and ask ourselves what rivers these are within Africa, if Africa is the modern name for the landmass of Eden. Since the Gihon River flows throughout the whole land of Ethiopia, watering the Garden of Eden. So let's ask ourselves that. Yes, Brother Gabriel, you can continue to the lower verses.
Okay. The book of Genesis chapter 2. Now start again at verses 10. And a river went out of Eden to water the garden, and from thence it was parted and became four heads. The name of the first is Pison. That is it which encompasseth the whole land of Havilah, where there is gold. And the gold of that land is good. There is bdellium and onyx stone. The name of the second river is Gihon or Gihon. The same is it that compasseth the whole land of Ethiopia. Verses 14. The name of the third river is Hiddekel or Hiddekel. that is which goeth towards the east of Assyria, and the fourth river is the Euphrates.
So we read about the Chedekeli River, which flows towards the east of Assyria, which we need to ask ourselves whether we have any river in the Middle East that flows towards the east. Now they say that the Chedekeli River is what they call the Tigris River today and the Euphrates River in the Middle East. But we have a problem. We have a big problem. We have a problem, the fact that the landmass which the river Gihon is in Africa, while the landmass that the river Chedekeli is in and the river Euphrates is in the Middle East. So we need to ask ourselves, let's see the criteria and compare and contrast. Is there a river in Africa that flows towards the east? The answer is yes. The river is the river Niger, which flows towards the east. And then we have the Euphrates, and the Euphrates, they don't mention the direction that the river Euphrates passes. However, we hear that the river Pison passes through the whole land of Havilah where there is good gold, and bdellium and onyx stone. So that river, if you look at Africa, Africa has a lot of gold that is valuable, a lot of bdellium, but particularly within the territory of the central region of Africa, particularly in Congo, in the Congo, the land that is sought after by the world's, all the Gentiles that surround the nations that surround Israel are after the wealth of the heart of Eden. The heart of the continent of Africa is full of onyx stone that is good for technology. It's full of bdellium and it's full of good gold. But particularly within the Congo, which is a territory that is sought after a lot. The reason why this land is in destabilization till this day is because it has things that the worlds around need to enrich them. Of course, there's other resources they can get from other places. However, this place is a large target. It's a trigger. So we need to pay a close attention to that. So if you talk about a river, is there a river flowing through the Congo? The answer is yes. It's a great river. Does it share a landmass with the Gihon River, which flows through Ethiopia? Yes, it does. Does the Niger River flow towards the east? Answer is yes, it does. It pours its arm into the Lake Chad, and its other arm pours into the Atlantic Ocean. And the Pison River pours into the Atlantic Ocean, originating from the south. And the Euphrates River is a Zambezi River, which they don't mention which land it goes through. These are four major rivers. And now they mention that the Euphrates is a great river. The great river Euphrates that flows. And then you have the Gihon River. So we need to ask ourselves, when is the Gihon River mentioned again in the scriptures? We need to ask ourselves. And we're gonna see that in the next geography, scriptural writings that we're gonna read through in English. So we need to understand all these things. The fact that if you were to situate Eden in the Middle East, you have climatic problems. There's no land that is sought after for bdellium, onyx stone, and good gold in that territory. as much as it is in Africa. If you ask me, the explorers, the Europeans that were looking for gold, that were looking for diamonds and everything and prosperity, why didn't they start in the Middle East to look for treasures? They did not start from the Middle East. They went after 10 lost tribes that went to the land of Azareth, where no man dwelt, and they also came after the Israelites, the remnants of Judah, that were situated within their land in order to come and take a spoil of them. So you need to ask yourself, these people still come today to the same place to take and loot all the resources. So how does it come to be that Eden is the same land that Abraham inherits, as in the land of Canaan? This is where it comes in. Abraham came from Assyria. And the river, which is the river Hiddekel, which flows towards the east of Assyria, is actually the Niger River, something that people don't want to know. People don't want to find out. Now, Abraham coming from Assyria was going to the land of Canaan. So if we want to plan out his travel route coming from the land of Canaan all the way down to a mountain which is between Bethel and Hai, we need to ask ourselves how he got there and what mountain that was. But before we even get there, we need to ask ourselves, if you talk about Assyria, you need to take into account of Daniel. Daniel was in captivity in the land of Babylon, which neighbors Assyria. And he was by the river Hiddekel, praying to the Most High. And traditionally, most theologians, many theologians and many Jewish scholars that you look up online, you can look all up on them on Google, believe that Daniel faced towards the east, towards Jerusalem, to pray to the Most High on behalf of the captivity of the children of Israel that were in captive in Babylon. Babylon and Assyria are bordering each other, and they share a water body which is called the river Tigris or the river Hiddekel. So I just want you to put Babylon in the Middle East and try to make Daniel face towards the east of Jerusalem. If they say Babylon is in Iraq today and you face east, you're facing towards Iran. You're facing towards India. You're not going to face towards Jerusalem. So we have a problem. Deacon Gabriel, could you help us show that the visual map of the river basins in Africa? All right, so we're taking a look at the river basins of each of the 4 major rivers in Africa. And when we take a look at this, you're going to see the river basin of the Nile. Now, in the scriptures that we read in Genesis chapter 2, it described the river compassing the whole land of Ethiopia. So if you mention the word compassing the whole land, you're talking about the fact that the river is giving borders. It's showing the borders of the river. It's showing the borders of the land of Ethiopia. So if you're trying to see the borders of the land of Ethiopia, you need to see how the river compasses the land, which means it encircles. So encircling land, if you just look at a river, if you look at a river without considering the river basins, you're not going to see the fact that the river encircles in the format of river basins. So as you can see, the river which compasses the whole land of Ethiopia is the Nile, and it's encircling It's encircling all the way from Uganda, Rwanda, South Sudan, part of actually half of Ethiopia, all the way up to Egypt. So that is a nice and more significant way to see the way a river compasses land. And if you consider the fact that Africa, our people used to live in land divided by water bodies, divided by key land demarcations such as mountains, such as valleys, and such as rivers. And rivers are dividing the continent not as the colonizer divided, but rather as the Most High Himself situated these people to be in the earth. Now, a lot of you are probably asking yourselves that Eden is a territory that is talked about before the flood of Noah. Okay, the flood of Noah happened and probably changed a lot of the landscapes. And now, what am I talking about? What are we talking about here? So, what we're talking about this, we are mentioning names in Genesis chapter 2 of people that existed after the flood. We are mentioning people that exist after the flood. If you talk about, for example, Cush, the land of Cush is called Ethiopia in Greek. You can go look it up in the Zondervan Bible Dictionary. You're going to see Cush being mentioned in the Zondervan, and it's going to have Ethiopia mentioned as the Greek form it was called. Ethiopia, you look up Ethiopia, you'll see that the Hebrew name of calling Ethiopia is Cush. So Cush, when the Greeks saw Ethiopia as a name suitable for that territory, Ethiopia means burnt faces. That's what it means in Greek. So burnt faces, obviously, you're talking about people of melanated complexion. And the Zondervan Bible Dictionary and other sources are key places to look at to know how people used to look like. Because according to the testimony of the Greeks, and also the testimony of Zondervan and other theologians, Ham was black. And the children of Ham were black in complexion. So where did the people of Ham dwell? The people of Ham dwelt alongside each other. They dwelt alongside each other. So we're going to see, if you see when the scriptures are mentioning the same river which flows throughout the whole land of Cush, Cush existed after the flood. Noah was the father of Ham, Shem, and Japheth. Ham gives birth to a son called, to sons, not a son, but many sons. Canaan, as I mentioned earlier, Put, Lud, Mizraim, who in Greek is called Egypt or Egyptus, and then finally Ethiopia, who in Hebrew is called Cush. So the river which compasses the whole land of Ethiopia, according to Genesis chapter 2, is none other than the Nile River. If you mention the word Nile, Nile is a recent name which was given to the Nile. What was it before? It wasn't the Nile River before. And more so, the Gihon River, even if it's the same river that flows throughout the whole land of Ethiopia, you'll find it being called the Nile later on in the scriptures. So let's keep note of that. The river of Egypt is the same as the river which flows throughout the whole land of Ethiopia. So this river is located east of Eden. East of Eden, and it waters the garden. Why do we say it waters the garden? Because the Nile River splits in 4. Could you share a map of the river and the parts which it splits into? on the screen. You just want to take a look at it. And when you see the different parts that the Nile has, today the famous parts people talk about considering the Nile is the Blue Nile and the White Nile. Okay, they mentioned the Blue Nile, the White Nile. All right, so when we look at that, we can see the four parts of the Nile. The first one that we can see over there is the one that's on the border of Eritrea. That's the first head. And then we have another head that goes in Ethiopia straight. That's the second one. Then we have the one that goes straight through South Sudan and connects directly to Uganda. That's the third one. And then you have the one which flows towards Chad and towards the Central African Republic, and that's the fourth. So those are the four parts that the Nile River is split in two. So now those are key heads of the Nile. It's split into four. Now, we talked about the rivers in Eden according to Genesis chapter 2, that passed through the land of Eden, and one of them, because it said a river flowed out of Eden to water the garden. It's one river. And that river is split into four heads. So we kept on reading onwards and mentioned other rivers like the Pison, the Gihon, the Hiddekel, and finally the Euphrates. So one of those rivers which is mentioned splits into four, according to Genesis chapter 2. And there we establish that the river which flows throughout the whole land of Ethiopia is the Gihon. And does it split into four parts? The answer is yes, it does. If people doubt that, you can Google it and you'll find the answer. The Nile River splits into four parts. Okay then, so now we gotta go to another map which looks at the four major river systems of Africa. We want to take a closer look at the four major river systems. Four major. So the first river that we were mentioning and putting emphasis on is the one that is east of Eden, that waters the garden east of Eden. Now, when you look at other rivers mentioned, it talks about the Hiddekel. The Hiddekel River flows towards the east of Assyria, flows towards the east, and that's the Niger River, because the Niger River flows towards the east. Now the question is, like I mentioned earlier, Assyria is a territory, it's a land which the Israelites were captive in. It was the same land that Daniel was captive in. And Assyria is a territory that was gotten after the flood. After the flood, after Noah's flood, you have the kingdom of Assyria coming to life. So how can you mention the king of Assyria? Because the person who's talking about the demarcations of this land was living in the times when the empires that are mentioned here existed. The empires of Assyria, the empire of Egypt, the empire of Cush existed, and he's talking about them because they're existing. So he says the same which flows throughout the whole land of Ethiopia, the same which goes towards the east of Assyria. And he's not saying, oh, there's an excuse that there's a flood that happened and there's land formations. He doesn't say any of that. We got to keep record of that. So the only river which is in the same landmass as the river Gihon, which flows throughout Ethiopia, the other rivers mentioned, we have four major rivers. So now the other river is one that flows towards the east. The only river flowing towards the east on the landmass of East Africa sorry, on the landmass of Africa, the continent, is the Niger River. And right there, it's flowing towards the Central African Republic. And then finally, the Pison River. It doesn't mention what direction the Pison flows, but it mentions what you find in the land that the Pison flows. And what you find is bdellium, onyx stone, and you also find good gold in that land. That's none other than the Congo River. Congo River right there. How could we make this up? Now somebody could ask that, okay, we find different names of places today. Names of places change as years go by, especially the effect of colonialism. People rename places, and not just the colonialism, but our people, our tribes of people, their languages evolved and changed names. And not just languages evolving, but when we returned from slave trade from other lands, we came back with new perspectives and ideas and changed names of places, changed names of our identity. We forgot who we were as a Bantu people. And not just the Bantu people, but other groups that surround us were also colonized. So now, let's look at the Congo River Basin and see how it divides and how it demarcates the land of Havila. Let's take a look. It compasses the land of Havila. Let's see how it compasses the land that has good gold. So this is scriptural. We got to go to the river basin map. Let's take a look at it. So if you talk about the scriptures, you need to ask yourself about how many rivers are in the Middle East. We have 4 major rivers in Africa. Thank you, Deacon Gabriel. So now we have the Congo River Basin. It's demarcating the land perfectly as if it were a country. Passing through the Central African Republic, passing through parts of Cameroon, passing through parts of what is known as Zambia, and passing through parts of Malawi. So this is the land of Havila, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. So, Deacon Gabriel, could you just read for me Genesis chapter 2, and you're gonna read verse 10 and downwards for them for the last time, and then we continue on, and then you'll probably have something to comment also.
The book of Genesis chapter 2 verse 10. And a river went out of Eden to water the garden, and from thence it was parted and became 4 heads. Verses 11.
Absolutely.
The name of the first is Pison. That is it, which compasses the whole land of Havila, where there is.
Thank you. The river compasses, it surrounds the land. Continue.
Verses 12. And there is gold, and the gold of that land is good. There is bdellium and onyx stone. Verses 13. And the name of the second river is Gihon. The same is it that compasseth the whole land of Ethiopia.
Thank you. So that is it. So now we need to ask ourselves, the one which have you read about the third one?
The book of Genesis chapter 2 verses 14. And the name of the third river is the Hiddekel. That is which goes towards the east of Assyria. And the fourth river is Euphrates.
So the fourth river is Euphrates. They don't mention the land it goes through. However, if you look at all the other rivers, they mention the lands which they encompass. So now, I'd like to take this opportunity to give Deacon Gabriel a chance to comment about this map that we're looking at and others.
All right, Deacon, thanks for the breakdown. In a nutshell, we're reading about the land of Eden. These are the demarcations that the writer of the book of Genesis is giving details concerning in his time and day. These are territories that, just like you broke down already, empires exist after the flood, probably 1,000, 2,000 years after the flood. We're looking at dynasties, especially of Hamitic races. When you're talking about the River Gihon, today around the Albertine Nile area, the East Nile area, the Victoria Nile area, the Nile Basin. I guess some are lucky enough that they've studied something about African ethnicity, and we know they break African groups into these categories. There's people that they call the Hamites. There's people that they call the Nilo-Hamites. And then there's people that they call the Bantus. So in regards what the Bible is talking about, Cush was what today would be classified a Nilo-Hamitic group. Why is this? It's because even with exploration, the explorers understood that the people that dwell around the Nile Valley are descendants of Ham. And if we could visit the book of Genesis chapter 10, from verses 6, it's going to tell us something about who the descendants of Ham are and where these titles come from. And it's just surprising, maybe to some of you, the fact that these territories are spoken about in the scriptures. Oh yes, on the very first page of the Bible. So this is what the book of Genesis chapter 10 verses 6 says. And it says, and the sons of Ham, Cush, and Mizraim, and Put, and Canaan. So for those of you that don't know who these sons of Ham are referencing, I'll assist you. The Greek name, as was mentioned earlier, for Cush is Ethiopia. Now, Ethiopia in the past involved areas like South Sudan and the Sudan. Actually, if we go on reading about the descendants of Cush in verses 7, we'll see that. But in the meantime, Cush references a Hamitic descendant whom the Greeks regarded as a black-faced people. So they termed the land of Ethiopia the land of black faces. That's what the word means. That was mentioned already. So we've got Cush, Mizraim referencing Egypt. Even presently, we all know that Egypt is an African country bordering the Mediterranean, where the Nile flows. It's a famous story when we're talking about the book of Exodus and how the children of Israel had to be, delivered out of the hand of Pharaoh from hard bondage. We know how Moses was placed on the Nile. So now we're discovering that the Nile, according to the book of Genesis chapter 2, is one of the rivers that watered the Garden of Eden eastward. Now this is really special because it means that Moses was interacting amongst people that even today are known to be black people, the Nilo-Hamitic group. Taking this further, it says, and verses 7 here. The book of Genesis, chapter 10, verse 7. And the sons of Cush are Sheba, Havilah, Sabteka, Rama, and the sons of Rama, Sheba, and Dedan. Dedan is where we get the word Sudan. Probably on the next class, we'll be breaking down how these words evolve to what we know today. At the end of the day, the emphasis here is on this land, according to the Bible, is Eden. And that's why we have the river Nile and other African rivers being referenced in the book of Genesis chapter 2. Likewise, the races that are being mentioned by the writer of the book of Genesis are nations that exist after the flood. And let's see what the scriptures actually say about that. Genesis chapter 10, verses 1. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished. And wait, the book of Genesis chapter 10, verses 1. Something's messing up with my, let me open this again. Bear with me, fam. Okay, here we go. The book of Genesis, chapter 10, verses 1. And it says, now these are the generations of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And unto them were sons born after the flood. That's the verse I wanted. So we can tell the territories being referenced are true to the time that the children of Israel are coming out of Egypt. Because this is the history of our forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. This is the history of the entire nations of the world. But Genesis 10, verses 1 is telling you that these territories are named according to these people in their lands after the flood. And that's key and important. It means that regardless of the global deluge, the territories that were referenced in Genesis chapter 2 retain their authenticity, and the water bodies that flowed within them were colonized, settled by people who lived after the flood. Yes, so this tells us that the African continent is an area of early human activity, okay? Not only in secular sources, but the source information that we have to reference the most according to faith that we have in the Most High is the scriptures. And the scriptures are giving us evidence that as it is known, Africa is the cradle of humanity and the source thereof. The Garden of Eden is East Africa. And the rest of Africa is the land of Eden. That's what I wanted to point out.
Absolutely. And I got to comment on the fact that there's a lot of our brothers who have woken up in Pan-Africanism, and I really respect them. I really respect all our brothers and sisters that have woken up in Pan-Africanism. However, most of y'all got to realize that the first thing that the colonizers, that caught the colonizers' eyes to divide this continent was the Bible. In fact, the Bible was giving them coordinates of how to reach what they were looking for. Now, if you look at the Bible as a colonial book and not beyond, not to look at it beyond as a cultural book, and if you look at it as a religious book, you're not going to realize the fact that the reason why the colonizers divided our continent in all the parts that they did is because it was written as a prophecy in the book that our forefathers had in Africa, which is now called the Bible, which was turned and perverted to convert us to Eurocentric religion. And if you look at the demarcations that are here in Africa, they're natural boundaries. And these natural boundaries were brought by mountains, rivers, and lakes. And these boundaries are still what are used in the Bible to administer the different places where these people had to go to. The people that are talked about in the Bible had encirclements of river systems, hills, valleys to demarcate the lands that they had to go to, not the political boundaries and border controls that they put in Africa. Now, these are the ancient boundaries, and these ancient boundaries were not drawn by any people on this earth. These boundaries were drawn by what people will call today extraterrestrials, or people that are not from this earth, that created this earth. So a lot of the people in Pan-Africanism wake up and say, oh yeah, we came from Egypt. Oh yeah, we have the wisdom from Egypt. Yes, because all these empires are places where great civilization took place, and these empires respected their boundaries in situate to the rivers that they had. And they knew that they had to take tribute from the nations that were bordering them, that they were ruling over. So this is the reason why they keep on saying that Africa, how can you unite Africa? You cannot unite Africa because the boundaries which were drawn by the people that are not from Africa are people who actually drew these boundaries out of the interest of the treasures that they read about in the book which they call the Bible, that talks about our history. So we need to realize that we should not shy away from any literature or any history that has to do with our people, because if we do that, we're never going to find out who we truly are. We're never going to find out the ultimate question for colonialism, which the last question for colonialism is understanding where the land was that they were looking for, its demarcations, and what is talked about to find in the lands that they put boundaries upon. So we're going to proceed. We'll talk more about that, but there's a lot to say about colonialism. But for now, we got to proceed with the Bible, which talks about the historical factors of this continent that we're on. So thanks for clarifying that, Deacon Gabriel, about every other thing that was mentioned about the landmass of Eden. So we want to factor in too the other geographical things talked about in the scriptures within the beginning. Scriptures say, go back to the ancient paths. You could read that for me, Deacon Gabriel, as we proceed. And then after that, we're going to touch the journey of Abraham. The journey of Abraham from the land of Egypt and what direction he took. So let's keep in mind as we read about the journey of Abraham, futuristic events about what's going to happen to this continent, because there's a prophecy that's prophesied to Abraham after he completes his journey. So he also comes from the land of Assyria first. After he goes to Assyria, he goes to the land of Canaan and goes down to the land of Egypt. So we're going to start first from when he was in Egypt and see where he went to after he came from Egypt. Yes, Deacon Gabriel, you can give...
Jeremiah chapter 6, verses 16. Thus saith the Lord, stand ye in the ways and see, and ask for the old path, where is the good way, and walk therein, and ye shall find rest for your souls. But they said, we will not walk therein.
Exactly. So we have a problem. Our people don't want to walk in the ancient past. They don't want to remember the ancient past. Now I'll tell you, the ancient paths are where the cradle of mankind began, and that's in Africa. The ancient paths is where, even if I don't care where people wake up from, when they wake up and realize they're Israelites, that the Israelites are black in America, they all think that the Middle East is the land. They all resorted out of Africa. They always say Jerusalem is on the other side because all of them want to shy away from the ancient paths. And we're going to compare the modern paths to the ancient paths and see which one holds more value. Okay, so let's proceed to Genesis chapter 15. We're going to start from verse 1.
The book of Genesis, chapter 15, verses 1. After these things, the word of the Lord came unto Abraham in a vision, saying, Fear not, Abraham, I am thy shield, and thy exceeding great reward. And Abraham said, Lord God, what wilt thou give me, seeing I go childless, and the steward of my house is this Eliezer of Damascus? And Abraham said, Behold, to me thou hast given no seed, and lo, one born in my house is mine heir. And behold, the word of the Lord came unto him, saying, This shall not be thine heir, but he that shall come forth out of thine own bowels shall be thine heir. And he brought him forth abroad and said, Look towards the heaven and tell the stars, if thou be able to number them. And he said unto him, So shall thy seed be. And he believed the Lord, and he counted it to him for righteousness. And he said unto him, I am the Lord that brought thee out of Ur of the Chaldees to give thee this land to inherit it.
So
He
let's
said,
pause there. We can stop there for a moment. First and foremost, he talks about how Abraham was gonna have children as many as the stars, and if you could count the stars, and if you could number them, that his children would be as many as the stars. And he tells him about the land he's gonna inherit. So he talks about the fact that obviously the number of children he's gonna have is all dependent on how much their population is gonna be growing. But aside from just the population, talk about the space of land these children are gonna need. Because children are not gonna dwell in a land that is small, too small to contain them. But rather they're gonna live in a spacious land. And Abram was coming from the land of Ur of the Chaldees, which we'll read in other portions of scriptures, which is the same as the land of Assyria. So now we need to ask ourselves that if the political state, which is called Palestine, is the land which the Most High was taking Abraham to, the spacious land, and today Israel is complaining about how crowded it is in that land. I don't think that Abram is going to inherit a land that small. Is it spacious? No. Can it support people? And if we all came back from America, we all came back as Israelites that were scattered across the world, and we came to a political state of Israel. Are we gonna fit there? Then some people say that, oh yeah, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Syria, and all the way to the border of the so-called Euphrates River in the Middle East is where we're gonna go. Really? Let's see where Abraham went when he was coming from Egypt this time. in Genesis chapter 13, starting from verse 1, reading from the KJV 11. KJV 16:11 is where we're reading. So let's go there. Genesis chapter 13. Start from verse 1.
The book of Genesis, chapter 13, verses 1. And Abram went up out of Egypt, he and his wife and all that he had, and Lot with him, into the south.
Mark that. So Abram went up out of Egypt with Lot and all that he had with him into the south. This was after Abram had come out of the land of Canaan. He went to Egypt, and then he came out of Egypt and went into the south. So if you see up out of Egypt, you need to understand the grammatical context. Up does not mean north. He's not saying he went north-south. There's nothing like north-south. He went up in altitude out of Egypt into the south. He went from the lowland to the highland. If you want to say that you climbed up a place, you're not going north of the place. You're rather climbing the altitude. And Egypt is a low, flat land. What proves that it's a low, flat land? Where does the Nile flow from? The Nile flows from a highland in East Africa and pours into a plain of the Sudan, straight into Egypt. As you keep going closer to the Mediterranean Sea, you're going into low, flat land. That's why the river is sloping, and that's why Abraham is coming up out of Egypt into the south, because he's coming southwards while climbing into the mountain ranges of East Africa. Some people here say that, oh no, some versions say the Negev. Some versions say it's the Negev. Okay, we're about to find out whether he was going into the Sinai Peninsula. Because if you go into the Sinai Peninsula, you're going east, not south. There's a problem. So now, if it says Negev, we need to find out if that's accurate according to scriptures. Let's continue.
The book of Genesis, chapter 13, verses 2. And Abraham was very rich in cattle, in silver, and in gold. And he went on his journey from the south, even to Bethel, unto the place where his tent had been at the beginning, between Bethel and Hai.
So now I want to tell you the fact that if you're traveling with cattle, that cattle needs to drink fresh water daily, needs to eat pastures daily. Okay? So if you went in the Negev, which is the Sinai Peninsula, which we're going to show up here later on, the Sinai Peninsula is a dry land surrounded by salty water. It's surrounded by water from the water body that they call today the Red Sea. It's salty, extremely alkaline. You cannot drink that water as a human, and the cow cannot drink it neither. So you cannot have your cattle walking in a desert. Cows eat on a daily basis, unless you want the cows to pass out. Okay? So when you're coming from Egypt, do the cows have access to fresh water? Answer, yes, they do. They do have access to fresh water. If you pass through the Middle East, do they have fresh water? No, they don't. We have a problem. Some people say, okay, the Middle East changed in climate. If you look at, if you stretch it out there and you look at the Sinai Peninsula, which is between the sea they call the Red Sea, it's a dry land, it's a wasteland. Okay? You cannot travel through there. So, you can continue reading downwards. Oh, it mentioned Bethel just a moment. It mentioned Bethel and Hai. Bethel and Hai is the first place. Those are places juxtaposed to a mountain. In between that mountain is where Abram was standing. He was standing between Bethel and Hai on a mountain. Now, we want to see the picture of the first Bantu migration and see where they say that the Bantus came from first. Because we believe that we're descendants of Abraham. So let's see. Where do they put record of where the Bantus came from the first time? We need to keep record that Abraham came from Assyria, which we said is in West Africa, because of the Niger River that flows towards the east of Assyria. Now we got to ask ourselves, the first Bantu migration is mentioned to be from West Africa. The first Bantu migration was situated from West Africa. I think I got to get the other, the one right before that one, the map right before that one. No, just before that one. I think it's the one in the middle. Just a moment. No, not that one. Right, that one, yeah, this one, the one before. No. The one after that one. Exactly. So we're looking at the first Bantu migration. It looks exactly as the route Abraham would have taken if he was coming from West Africa, straight into the mountain areas of East Africa, straight into the mountain range of East Africa. And he came with other multitudes. Remember, Abraham did not come alone. He came with Eliezer and Lot. And he found other people dwelling within the land of Canaan. The Canaanites were in the land, ladies and gentlemen. The time recorded of when this event happened, the first Bantu migration, was 2000 BC. 2000 to 3000 BC. Okay? So if we look at that, it's interesting the fact that that's the time that biblical scholars record that Abraham lived in those days. Is that a coincidence? I don't know. So when you look at the mountain range of East Africa, you will see that there is a mountain which gets stood on, and we're going to find out what mountain was that potentially that Abraham stood. This is the highland feature. It shows green is showing the highlands that are in Africa. Dark green is the highlands, light green is the flatlands. And this keeps on proving the fact that Sudan is a flat land. And Abraham went up out of Egypt into the south. So he was going all the way to where the Nile was coming from. Deacon Gabriel, please continue reading for me. Read for me till, just continue reading from verse 4, and I'll tell you when to stop.
All right. Footnote on something you said about Abraham coming from West Africa. From the reading that we did in Genesis chapter 2, you pointed out that the river Hiddekel flows throughout the whole land of Assyria. Assyria in this case would be referencing West Africa because that's a river that flows from there towards the east, the river Niger, right? So that's something that the audience might want to pay attention to. Something else about the map that you asked me to pull up just now is that the areas in orange, yellow, and red are the highest area. Those would be the mountain ranges. So this map is something that you have to pay attention to as it's broken down. So back to the book of Genesis, chapter 13 and verses 4. Unto the place of, let me start at verses 2. And he went on his journey from the south, even to Bethel, unto the place where his tent had been at the beginning, between Bethel and Hai.
So just a moment there. It continues to say he went on from his journeys into the south. It means when he went south of Egypt, he kept on going south. Are you going to tell me that the next time they mention the word south, it's talking about the Negev? Because it doesn't make any sense. If he went to the Negev and he goes to Sinai Peninsula, which is surrounded by the Red Sea, and he goes south, is he going to Saudi Arabia? Honestly, it does not make any sense. He was going to East Africa. Because if you go on, continuing onward south of Egypt, you will find East Africa and mountain ranges. Yes, you can continue.
And it says, verses 4, unto the place of the altar which he had made there at first. And there Abraham called the name of the Lord. And Lot also, which went with Abraham, had flocks and herds and tents. And the land was not able to bear them, that they might dwell together. For their substance was great, so that they could not dwell together.
So now, just a moment. There's a lot of people that are excited here that believe in the political state, saying that, oh, the land was too small to bear them. Oh, look at that. No, it's not talking about there that is small and they couldn't be. It's because when they came to the land, they found many people in the land. They found other tribes of people. Just like Africa is a continent full of many people, full of many tribes. And they were sojourners. And if you're a sojourner in the land, you're gonna need favor from the people that surround you. That's the favor they did not get. Continue.
The book of Genesis 13, verses 8. And Abraham said unto Lot, let there be no strife, I pray thee, between me and thee, between my herdmen and thy herdmen, for we are brethren.
Oh, you forgot to read verse 7?
The book of Genesis chapter 13, verses 7. And there was strife between the herdsmen of Abraham's cattle and the herdmen of Lot's cattle. And the Canaanite and the Perizzite dwelt then in the land.
Thank you. So it gives you the reason why there was strife. It's because there were other people that were dwelling in the land. Continuing to verse 9.
The book of Genesis chapter 13, verses 9. Is not the whole land before thee? Separate thyself, I pray thee, from me. If thou wilt take the left hand, then I will go to the right. If thou depart to the right hand, then I will go to the left. Verses 10. And Lot lifted up his eyes and beheld all the plain of Jordan.
All the plain of what?
All the plain of Jordan. That it was well watered, everywhere before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, even as the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt, as thou comest unto Zoar.
Okay. Continue on. Verse 11, because we want to know where the Jordan was. We want to know where the Jordan was and where Lot went after Abraham came south of Egypt. on to the south to a mountain where he first put his first tent. Lot separated from him and went what direction? He went to the plain, in the plain of the Jordan. But what direction? Continue, verse 11.
The book of Genesis 14, verses 11. Then Lot chose him all the plain of Jordan, and Lot journeyed east, and they separated themselves one from another.
Thank you.
Abraham,
Continue.
verses 12. And Abraham dwelt in the land of Canaan, and Lot dwelt in the cities of the plain, pitched his tent towards Sodom.
Thank you. So he dwelt in a territory of a plain, okay? And we need to ask ourselves, where is east? Is there any plain that is east of East Africa? We need to ask ourselves, is there any plain that is east, south of Egypt? Because south of Egypt is where Abraham went. And Egypt is in East Africa. We know that for sure. Egypt is in Northeast Africa. So you go south of Egypt, you're still going further south on the eastern side of Africa. And you continue onwards, you will go and you will find a plain that is east where Sodom and Gomorrah were. Sodom and Gomorrah were. So now we need to ask ourselves, what river was that? That is called the Jordan. The river Jordan is the same river which is called in the Jewish language Jordan. It's the same river which flows throughout the whole land of the Sudan. It's the same river. And it's the same river as the Nile River, and it's the same river as the Gihon River. That's why people have a problem here. They want to put the Jordan River the other side. Okay? Lot journeyed east of the Jordan, in a plain. And Abraham remained in the land of Canaan. So let's see. I want us to look at a map. I just want you to take a look at that map that I just tossed, the very last one that I shared. We need to look at some key places here. If you zoom in on this map of Ethiopia, you're going to notice something amazing. We're going to find some names of places that rhyme with places talked about in scriptures. Okay? First, the place that we're going to find is Sodo. We have a name there, Sodo. And we have Arba. We need to keep this in mind, Arba and Sodo. Now the question is, why is a place here in Ethiopia called Sodo? And this is not the only map that talks about Ethiopia. This is not even an ancient map. This is a modern map. There's a place called Sodo. Question is it in a plain or not? So this is the answer. The answer is Sodo in Ethiopia is in a plain. It's in the Turkana Basin plain. They talk about the fact that the Dead Sea in the Middle East is a salty sea. The Turkana Lake, which is over 100 times bigger than what they call the Dead Sea in the Middle East, is salty. It's an alkaline water body. So how can you call the other one a sea and call that one a lake when it's 100 times bigger than the Dead Sea? And I could think, I'm probably even underestimating the amount of times. So we want to look at a vision of how wide the Turkana Basin is. The Turkana Basin is a plain, it's a valley. It's a territory of a valley within Ethiopia. It's not in highland range. However, it's surrounded by the highlands of East Africa, but it's a valley. And they call the Sodom and Gomorrah the valley of Sodom and Gomorrah. But yet it's also called a plain of Sodom and Gomorrah sometimes. So let's take a look at, go straight to the last image that I just sent you right now. Deacon Gabriel, just right there. Perfect. So the light picture that you're seeing there in color red is talking about a lake basin. Now that lake basin is a lowland and it's a valley which stretches from northwest Kenya to southwest Ethiopia. And that's the area where you'll find a place called Sodo in Ethiopia. Now somebody could say, okay, you're making this up. How did that happen? We need to look at this, the event of how Sodom and Gomorrah were destroyed. They were destroyed by fire and brimstone. Fire and brimstone. Fire and brimstone come from mountains that have had a volcanic eruption and spit out the stones of fire. There's diverse types of eruptions that come. There's diverse kinds, and there's active volcanoes in Ethiopia. There's active volcanoes in Ethiopia that cause water in Ethiopia to become alkaline. And as we kept on reading, we discovered that the land was as well watered as the Garden of Eden. The land which was in the plain of Sodom and Gomorrah was well watered everywhere. Before Yahuwah, before Yahweh destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, which means the land is not as well watered as the rest of the land of Canaan. So we need to look and ask ourselves, is Ethiopia as green as the rest of the territory south of Egypt? Answer is no. If you look at the Congo, if you look at Uganda, if you look at Tanzania, Kenya, and Rwanda, they're more well watered in that they have more grassland areas. It's more green. They have more flora in their territory than Ethiopia. And flora comes because of water. Okay? Flora comes because of water. You cannot make this up. We cannot make it up. If you keep on going closer to Ethiopia from Kenya, you're gonna find more arid regions. All right, so we want to go to the point at which Arba is talked about in the scriptures. Arba is a key place. Arba is a place we've just seen in Ethiopia right now. Now we need to ask ourselves, who is Arba and where was Arba according to the scriptures? So this is it. Deacon Gabriel, you're gonna take me to the book of, you're gonna go to the book of Genesis chapter 35, go to verse 27.
The book of Genesis 35, verses 27. And Jacob came unto Isaac his father unto Mamre, unto the city of Arba, which is Hebron, where Abraham and Isaac sojourned.
Abraham and Isaac sojourned in a city called Arba, which is in Hebron. So somebody could say, okay, wait a second. Maybe it's a coincidence that Ethiopia is named Arba, that the portion that is southwest of Ethiopia is named Arba. That it's a coincidence. But let's find out who was Arba, because territories are named after people. that existed in the scriptures. Let's go to the book of Joshua, chapter 14, verse 15. Deacon Gabriel, take me to Joshua, chapter 14, verse 15.
The book of Joshua. You said the book of Joshua, chapter 14, verse 2?
Oh, yeah. Yep, absolutely.
The book of Joshua, chapter 14, verses 2. By lot was their inheritance, as the Lord commanded by the hand of Moses, for the 9 tribes.
Oh, no. I said Joshua 14, 15. Joshua chapter 14.
Joshua chapter 14, verses 15. And the name of Hebron before was Kirjath Arba, which Arba was a great man amongst the Anakims, and the land had rest from war.
So Arba was a great man amongst the Anakims. Arba was an Anakim. Arba was an Anakim. And the land is called Hebron. It's called Kirjath Arba. So we have 3 names, Kirjath Arba, Hebron, and Arba. Those are the names of the territory. And the Anakims dwelt there. So we have another account which talks about the Anakims. You can go to, Deacon Gabriel, go to the book of Joshua, chapter 15, verse 13.
The book of Joshua, chapter 15, verses 13. And unto Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, he gave a part amongst the children of Judah, according to the commandment of the Lord to Joshua, even the city of Arba, the father of Anak, which city is Hebron.
Thank you. So, actually, continue. Just continue on to 14.
The book of Joshua, chapter 15, verses 14. And Caleb drove thence the 3 sons of Anak, Sheshai, Ahiman, Talmai, and the children of Anak.
All right, so, no, we can stop there. So the question is, Arba is the father of the Anakims and the father of Anak. If you look at Arba, which is in Ethiopia, southwest Ethiopia, it's a territory which the Sudanic tribe called Anuak or Nyakim, they dwell in southwest Ethiopia and southeast Sudan. And if you look at them, the Anuak and the Nyakim, they are people of great stature. They are people who are tall. The scriptures talks about the sons of Anak and the sons of Anakim as the giants, or people of great stature that were known as the giants. Now, I just sent in an image that displays the kind of body features that these people actually had. And not had, but even have today. And these are people whom you found within Africa. Is this a coincidence? I don't think so. I do not think that it's a coincidence to find people of great stature in Africa. Now, lots of people in America think that, okay, everybody in Africa is the same. Everyone in Africa is black. No, we have differences. And these are the people. The sons of Ham were black. We need to ask ourselves, where did the Anakims come from? They're descendants of Canaan. They're descendants of Canaan from the son of Canaan called Arva that we'll read about later on. All right, so this territory in Ethiopia called Arba is a territory which is right next to people called the Anuak tribe and the Nyakim tribe. This is not a coincidence. Are there any people of great stature that are situated within Palestine? Answer is no. Are they black? No. Is there any place called Arba? No. Is there any place called Sodo or Sodom? No. There's nobody that called Sodom in that place. Okay, so we need to confirm whether these people actually still lived in the land of Canaan. Some people will say, okay, children of Anak were wiped out. They're no longer in Canaan. And that's absolutely slipshod. So Deacon Gabriel, we're gonna crown it in for this one, and we're gonna go to part 2 after it. But we're gonna just go to Joshua chapter 11, and you're gonna read for me verse 22, and then we go to part 2 from there.
All right, the book of Joshua, chapter 11, verse 22. There was none of the Anakims left in the land of Israel, only in Gaza, in Gath, in Ashdod, who remained.
So the children of Anak, or the children whom I'm gonna call the Yakims or Anuak, they stayed in the territory called Gaza and Ashdod. Now we need to find out where these places are, and we'll find out where they are later on, excuse me. So we're gonna find out where they are later on. But we need to ask ourselves, why is it that south of Egypt, where Abraham went to the land of Canaan, is where these people of criterias of this nature actually live? Why is it that you find places with names and tribes with names, and there's many more tribes that we're gonna find that have names that connect with scripture? Now, if you want to wake up and understand that black people, the Bantu people, and the people scattered around are Israelites, you need to ask yourself, whether you know the names of the tribes that exist in Africa, you need to know whether you understand the languages of the people in Africa, and if you can differentiate the differences of Africans from each other. You also need to know the localities and the district names of people in Africa. You cannot claim to know who you are if you don't know where you come from. That's a key concept. Next up on part 2, we're gonna look at the journey of Abraham from West Africa, from Assyria, from Ur of the Chaldeans. So I hope y'all have had an insightful study here. We're always glad to be here together with you, Deacon Gabriel and I, and looking forward to opening more information that ties us together in the roots where we come from. Salama. It's been great.
All praise to the Most High. Salama family. See you in the second part.